right, let's get started. All right, thank you. Welcome to the special business meeting of the board. First thing is a pledge of allegiance. Everybody please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Well, first, do we have Amy online? Yes. Okay. Amy is dialing in and will be listening and voting via phone. So everybody's aware. The board met in executive session beforehand to discuss some legal and personnel issues. And we met last week to review some personnel issues. Last Monday. Or excuse me, last Tuesday, sorry. All right. First thing on the agenda is recognition. Music in the Parks. Mr. Search.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Search. Members of the board, parents, community. I bring greetings from the middle school music department. And before I get to my presentation, I also just want to take an opportunity anytime I'm here to just say thank you. I know the chairs you sit in are tough and you make decisions that impact our programs every day. And I just want to thank you for your time and everything like that. It means a lot to us in the schools for sure. Tonight we're up here to talk a little bit about the middle school and our participation in the Music Parks Festival, and then point out a very special recognition that we received at the festival this year. When I started looking over our records, this is the 20th year we've participated in the Music in the Parks Festival, actually the 21st in 1997. Then choral teacher Carol Weaver suggested we go, and that spring we took a trip out there with the choir, and I really love the program a lot, so starting next year we took our jazz band and orchestra. We'll be going every year since. The Music in the Parks Festival is an adjudication festival. Those groups go to performance locations in and around Hershey. They perform for judges. Judges are typically college professors, retired teachers. They score and adjudicate the band, the orchestra, and the choir. Then we head over to Hershey Park. The kids enjoy the afternoon and evening there, and there's an award ceremony where they receive, whatever the awards or recognitions that they get. The judges score on a score of 1 to 100. It's all combined up, and there are 5 rankings that they can receive. There's superior, excellent, good, fair, and poor. And I took a look over the records I want to prepare for tonight. Over the 20 years, our Great Valley ensembles have only ever received excellent and superior ratings, the top 2 rating groups. And over those years, we've brought home any number of sort of caption awards: best overall choir, best overall band, best overall orchestra, as well as some individuals, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit. Historically, we've just done really well at Hershey. It's always been good for us, and the students have had a lot of fun. Our results this year, for our results this year, our orchestra came in 2nd place in their division, a very difficult division. They scored just a couple of points under an arts magnet school from Delaware. So they scored 2nd in their division, received a rating of excellent. Our jazz band and choirs both scored 1st place in the division, also rating of excellent. And our jazz band also received the best overall jazz band of the festival. So it was a good year for us. And those are all nice awards. But one thing that I'm proud of, and over the years, Molly is the 4th to be recognized for this that we've had from our jazz program. The judges can choose to recognize individual students out of the hundreds of students participating in the festival. So just a little bit of quick backstory. Molly came to me back in, I think it was like January or February, and said, I want to solo. I want to learn how to solo. So if you're going to solo in jazz band, you have to improvise, and improvisation is a difficult skill to teach. So she and I started working, and she came down for extra help, and we worked and she got quite good at it. And I sort of had a feeling going into the festival that she had a chance at something, but I never like to say anything because I don't want to set the expectations too high. But I was just really proud for Molly and everything when she was recognized this year at the Music in the Parks Festival as the outstanding jazz soloist, and she had put a lot of work in on that, and it was really a testament to her work effort and ethics. So it's my pleasure to present our Music in the Parks Outstanding Jazz Soloist of the Year, Molly Goldman. We're going to go out front.
It's easier just to come over here. So I get the honor of honoring our student representatives to the school board. So Tyler is a senior and he will be leaving us this year, and Millie's a junior. So I think this is a rarity because I can't think of this. All the years I've been on the board where we've had a junior, so we get the privilege of having her back. So it's all exciting. But we've got a couple parting gifts for the two of you. That's already been a long night. Couple gifts for you. Tyler, we wish you well at Virginia Tech and your endeavors down there, and wish you well with your senior year coming up. Tyler's going to introduce the alternate for next year in a few minutes, but real fast, let's bring out the presents, and thank you very much.
All right, congratulations, kids. Tyler, future Hokie. Very nice. Fighting Gobblers. All right, so I'm actually filling in for Mr. Ellis. Matt Ellis is our advisor for our computer programming competitions. And Shrey, Lucas, and Blaine, Chris, and Thomas, a couple of you guys here? Come on up, guys. Two out of the 5's not bad. So this year, Shrey Pandia, Lucas Armand, Blaine Huey, Christopher Yee, and Thomas Cox were competed in the Pennsylvania Regional Computer Fair. And all 5 of our students received awards at this fair. Shrey, who's not here, was awarded first place. Lucas Armand was awarded second place. Blaine Huey, Christopher Yee, and Thomas Cox were awarded third place in the Pennsylvania Regional Computer Fair. So congratulations, guys. And Shrey's not here. If I just real quick, I just wanted to add also, Shrey went on to the Pennsylvania State Computer Fair programming competition, and Shrey was awarded first place in the State Computer Fair programming competition. Students were asked to create an Android app which solves a real-world problem. Shrey created an app which interacts with Skyward to send notification when grades are updated and can provide students with statistics regarding their grades. So congratulations, Shrey, on that.
Come up, you guys. Good evening. My name is Christina Kleinberg, and I'm a biology teacher at the high school. Chester County Envirothon competition was held at Hibernia State Park on May 3rd. Envirothon is an environmental science competition that challenges kids for their knowledge and skills in 5 key areas: forestry, wildlife, aquatics, soils, and current issue. This year's current issue was grassland and pastureland management. And our blue team placed first overall in the current issue station and third place in the competition. And our team members, two of them are missing, our seniors, Edison Kim and Anna Miller, juniors, Arun Urgerwal and Cooper Schlegel, and our freshman, Jack Schlegel. We are excited to have 3 members returning this for next year, and we wish our seniors the best of luck in their future endeavors. Good job.
Come on up there, gentlemen. Good evening. Come on up, guys. I'll take care of the next 2. So before I talk about my pleasure to talk about these guys, Paul Waltz sends his regrets. He very much regrets not being able to stand here and talk about this most remarkable team, who for the 2nd consecutive year took 2nd place in the state of Pennsylvania. I know that so from my left, we've got Mark Lucier and Warwick Parvis, Ryan Hamill, and Amish Saini. All right, we've got Nikhil Gangoli, Sam Kesty, and then Samir Gangoli. All right, and I know they would be the first to tell you that they wish they had taken first in the state. I hope that very shortly they'll realize what an amazing accomplishment. Certainly no tennis team has done that before. Mr. Wren might know better. I don't know that there's another athletic team in Great Valley history that has done that consecutive years. So it requires that you're young the first time and healthy the second time. And I will say that there were times they were going up against teams that maybe didn't express the best character and sportsmanship, and this team never lost their character and never stopped playing with a sportsmanlike attitude. They represented this community extremely well. And then there are some individual accomplishments. Nikhil, as a freshman, won the league singles championship and then partnered with Charles Swope, who graduated that year in 2015, to win the league doubles championship. And then in 2017 and 2018, he partnered with second singles player Sam Kesty to win the league doubles championship. All right? And then this year, the two of them partnered again to win the league doubles championship and then go ahead and take third in the state. 2 years ago, I'm sorry, Sam as a sophomore took the league singles championship. And then we fast forward to Samir here as the first singles player. As a freshman, he took the league singles championship. This year as a sophomore, he took the league singles championship, the district singles championship, and then we believe was the youngest player in the last 25 years to take gold medal at the state. And so that's pretty remarkable stuff. I will say they are led by their captains, Nikhil and Sam, who will be going to the University of Pennsylvania and the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, respectively. So these are well-rounded young people. And if I can ask for 30 seconds of additional indulgence, in the fall when we had a girls team that was entering its postseason play, 4 of them without hesitation agreed to come out and help them prepare so that, they are selfless. And that's a testament to them and to their parents for raising selfless people. So thank you and congratulations, gentlemen.
do we have a parent who needs to get a picture? We can bring these kids back up if you do. Yeah, can you all come back up here? We the parent that wants to get a picture.
Absolutely.
Yes.
It's going to be called the second serve picture.
Trophy again.
Mr. Graff?
It's the second serve picture. Oh, come on. That was a good one.
I believe if we team back up too for our science picture, because this might be.
Don't move. Let's make sure everybody gets them.
Wait, you got one more.
One more.
Good job, boys.
We're good.
Okay, Nicole, you want to come up? A couple months ago, if you recall, Regina and I announced that Nicole Amelia, our food service director here at Great Valley, had been selected the School Nutrition Association of Pennsylvania's Director of the Year. She was nominated by one of her staff, Kelsey Gardner, our dietitian. And some of the highlights of why they selected her was that earned her this distinction. She has created her creation and implementing of best practices in procurement and co-op buying. If you recall, last year we had the gigantic joint bid with over 30 school districts that we are what they call the lead agency for, purchasing, saving a tremendous amount of money. Our Farm to School initiative goes without saying. You enjoy it every time we come to a board meeting. It's both nationally and it's both state and nationally recognized, and continues to thrive. She's also very active in the School Nutrition Association of Pennsylvania, which is the acronym is SNAPA. So. She right now, she's served in leadership and is currently serving as president for this year. She created the Angel Fund for students who can't afford to buy their own lunch. And our employee training and development program is probably one of the best around. It's well recognized, including a recipe training so that we're consistent everywhere. Whereas sometimes I complain about they count the chocolate chips that go in those muffins so that we meet the nutrition guidelines. Now, aside, we've had the pleasure of Nicole working here pretty much since she was in college. She was an intern for our predecessor, Barb. We sent her away for a year to be trained at Upper Merion. Was it a year? One year, and then when Barb retired, we knew we had to reel her back in, so we brought her in and made what we consider a great decision in our food service ranks. I think our food service program is one of the best. We have great staff. We have great food. I know it could be a little, get rid of some of those whole wheat funky things and give me some real butter now and then, but she keeps us on the straight and narrow, so congratulations, Nicole, on
I just want to say that this food services program here has been a jewel in our crown for many years. And it's much to the credit of a lot of people, but I think it's it really speaks well as to the teamwork in the district. Chuck, I know that you and your office have a lot to do with that. So this was a great honor to have Nicole get this award. So I'm very proud. Thank you.
We are just going to take one moment and have the Envirothon students come up to get a picture with Mrs. Kleinberg. So, Mr. Barrett, if you wouldn't mind a redo. It will take 2 minutes, but it will be yes.
Mr. Barrett, would it be okay if I can introduce the next representative so they can go home and study for their finals coming up?
Yeah, I guess that's a good excuse, even though you're a senior. No, exactly. Just give him 1 minute, no problem.
Yeah, I'll give them 1 more minute.
All right, so Tyler can go home and study for finals, and maybe these two also, for that matter.
Tyler's done, right?
I'm all done. I have no
Oh, they want to study.
They want to study. I'm looking out for them.
I was a little worried there, Tyler.
I remember this time last year, we had this similar thing, and you let me and Millie go a little bit early, so we could study for finals. And as they're sitting here, I'm thinking that's in the back of their head.
We got a meeting next week, so both of you don't have to come next week, because I know that's really right in the middle of finals, so.
So like always, I want to start out with a countdown. Seniors have -2 days left of classes, and there are 4 more days until graduation. But I know the seniors have been counting down since the beginning of the year, and it's crazy because I remember in one of our first meetings, Mr. Barrett, you said graduation's date set, June 8th, and it has come a lot faster than I could possibly have imagined. So I wanted to first off, before I introduce these guys, I want to thank everyone on the school board, Dr. Speaker Polubensky, Mr. Flick, Ms. Kleinberg, who I think has just head out, and Mr. Barrett. I know I've known you personally a little bit longer, and I still remember our ski trips going down whatever mountain we had with Mr. Spencer and Mrs. Spencer there. So it has been a crazy time here. So this time, sophomore year, I never pictured myself being here, but I always wanted to be in student council. I ran for president, vice president, body vice president, school, class president, really basically everything, and alas, I never won something. But this time, last year, I was talking to Millie actually, and she was talking to me about how she was applying to be a school board representative, and Ms. Kleinberg and her both mentioned it to me. I said, maybe that'll be the thing that actually sticks for me. So a year later, I can say it's been one of the most interesting and beneficial things that I've done with this school because it gives me a whole different background on how the board and district functions. So I see the nitty-gritty, what goes on. I barely knew there were meetings every Monday night. I come occasionally, but nothing nothing as regular as I am now. But I'm very happy that I've done this, and I think having this experience has really set me up to understand things in the future. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the student representative of the school board, is Miss Millie Field. She has been here before, and she definitely has covered me this year, and I know she will do an amazing job next year. Also, for the alternate, it'd be Ian Adler, who I've known a lot longer than since the Sugartown days. But I know they both will have an outstanding time next year, and they are now dismissed to go study for their finals.
Yeah. Welcome, I guess, for you, and welcome back for you, Millie. So, yeah. And Tyler, real quick, what's the process? So everybody, you apply, right?
Yeah, so to become a school board rep, so it's a little bit different. It's I jokingly say it's the only non-elected position in student council. But basically, you fill out an application with a resume. Actually, I'll let them finish first.
Thank you. Tyler.
I just want to make sure everyone understands, it's not just simply.
It's not simply you.
Tyler, you're it.
Yeah, it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
the process goes. We have a couple essays that we have to write along, and we paste in our application with our resumes. And if that's stage one, it's a two-part stage. And after we get past there, we then interview with Mr. Flick and Mrs. Kleinberg. They kind of ask us questions about how we can best utilize the position and going forward, how we can make the school and the school district a better place. So that was the process, and Millie's now seen it, and now Ian has both seen it. So they're both ready for the next year, and I know they'll do a great job.
Well, thank you for everything. I can honestly say over the years, we've always been more and more impressed every year by the board reps we get. I mean, Virginia Tech, that's impressive, and we wish you well in whatever you do in life, so. And if you want to leave early on your last meeting, you're welcome to.
I mean, I have no more finals. I've been counting down. It's my prize, like my prize jewel of senior year, not having any finals.
And we are ready to begin with the proposed final budget.
Okay, so this is just a recap of the budget. No real changes since May, the last time we went over it in a little depth, which is the beginning of May. Here's our budget total. It's $105 million. We highlighted the pension portion and the special ed portion because those portions tend to be the biggest increase. The total budget increased 5.2%. But of that, the pension and special ed components were a combined about 10% each. So that's where the numbers come from. This is the Pac-Man pie that just another way to look at the expenditures. You can see the largest, or revenues, as you can see, the largest chunk of our revenues comes from local sources, predominantly real estate tax. The pie shows a decrease in the use of reserves, as we said at the last meeting. State sources are up mainly due to increased cost in pension. The decrease in reserve usage keeps us in line with your school board policy on fund balance reserves, which requires us to bring you a budget that maintains a 5 to 8% unassigned unreserved fund balance. The proposed budget enables us to do that and to keep reserves. That's why when we lowered the millage, we did not lower or when we lowered the budget, we did not lower the millage. We needed to make sure we were within and keeping the unreserved and unassigned fund balances at 5 to 8%. This is the level that the credit rating agencies such as Moody's look to when they evaluate the financial health of a government entity. Maintaining a healthy fund balance has always allowed us to continue our credit rating, which is AAA. That's the highest rating Moody's issues. Also remember that we get very little state money, so we have to count on in July until August when we collect real estate taxes to pay bills. So you need that money to pay things such as one of the big debts is due the beginning of August before the tax money comes in. These are the expenditures. Just another way. This is my Death Star analogy here. The Death Star is circling the large expenditures. Just a different way. The small pie on the right shows a portion of the budget that we really have the most ability to change, which are the operating costs, the infrastructure, and the budget reserved and planned transfers. The planned transfers are up a little this year, as when we just discussed the last couple meetings in detail, mainly due to the need to continue to fund the capital reserve so we can stay on top of our deferred maintenance program. And changes in some of this stuff would require changes in programming and class sizes. This is our reserves, the history of our reserves and what we anticipate this year to be. You can see the non-committed or unassigned, unrestricted is projected to be, that's the red, 5.8 million, or about 5.5% of our budget, which stays in line with the board policy, which requires us to bring you a budget that's between 5 and 8% of the budget. For 2000, it's 5.5% of the 2018-19 budget, and that is kind of on the low end. We've been higher in the past, but we've not exceeded it. And at the bottom, the little red or orange boxes up there shows our committed, assigned, and reserved fund balances, restricted fund balances, which we'll talk about a little bit in the work session. We have to have the board designate those fund balances for next year for the auditors. The millage, it's a 2.4% increase, which is the Act 1 index. The proposed millage right now is at 2.295, which is 2.4% over last year's increase, which was 0%. I don't know if you want to talk about the...
Nothing has changed in this slide from the beginning, and we are in line looking at posting and filling the positions that we would need to fill and making the adjustments within our elementary. Again, many of those decisions are not made until we have a better handle on our enrollment numbers at the elementary level. But Dr. O'Toole and Dr. Gafredo are working with the principals at each level to make sure that those changes are addressed as soon as is possible, as soon as decisions are made.
That was the water main that actually feeds the middle school, so the high school had water. But the middle school, we had low pressure, and we virtually, Aqua was pretty good, pretty quick, and then our maintenance department flushed the lines, and it was like no one even knew we were without water for a little bit, so. Another chart here, this is the chart that compares what the Act 1 index has been over the past, since the inception, what our millage increase has been over those years, and what the Social Security cost of living adjustment has been over those years. Don't have 18-19 on there because the 18-19 Social Security adjustment hasn't been finalized yet, so we'll add that for next year. This is just a comparison. We shared this last year. You know, since the inception of Act 1, we've had the lowest overall tax increase of any school district in the county. So we're kind of proud of that to maintain our programs. Tax rates, you can see we're not quite the lowest, but I do understand Westchester is utilizing some exceptions this year, and we may fall back to the lowest after this. So I did mention that to the superintendent of Westchester last week at the Chamber of Commerce meeting when he was presenting. He asked. just making friends. So the final adoption is tonight, which has to be done before June 30th. We adopted this early. Now, some schools have already adopted it. Some schools will wait, and you'll see them adopting it late in June. We adopted this early. We have a 6 installment. We have a 3 installment, but the installments are, it is 6 installments. Jesus. All right. 6 installments. We start July. It's the 15th of every month. So in order to give the people an ample opportunity to at least get 30 days to get their first installment organized and ready, we try to get the tax bills out. Dolores is back there. We'll try and get them out sometime next week, which will enable everyone to have at least a month. So, questions?
All right. Thank you. All right. That concludes any of the presentations for the voting part of this evening. I'll now open up the podium for public comment. If anybody's got any comments related to the voting item, please come to the podium, state your name and residency, And if you could limit your time to 3 minutes in case anybody else wants to speak, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Am I supposed to push this button? Okay, thanks. Bill Dwyer, 10 Stewart Drive, East Whiteland. I'm more disappointed in the budget this year, and disappointed for this reason. I've seen very little input from any of the board members with regard to this budget. I think you've basically turned the running of the school district over to the school superintendent, which I think is a huge mistake. I would ask that you take a hard look over the summer and come back and be ready to address this budget next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've heard all my points over the last 5 or 6 months, but I'll repeat some of them, if not all of them. Over the last 6 years, you're asking for a $30 million increase, which equates to over 6% a year, which is far beyond CPI, which is unexplainable to me. Unionville, a similar school district, had a budget back in 6 years ago of $70 million. We were at $76 million. Their budget for next year is going to be $87 million. We're going to be $105. I don't know how you can explain that. This budget, you're asking for another 5%, plus you're going to take $4 million of debt money that's been paid off, and you're going to convert that to operational funds. So in essence, you're taking more money from the public than just the tax increase. We have the highest, by far, cost per student in the county. If you look at our better districts that do better than us academically and ranking-wise, we could have a 10% tax cut if we spent the same as them per student. If you went by other districts that are pretty good districts, very good districts, we could have up to a 25% tax cut. So we're spending a lot of money. All that stuff about a low tax increase in the millage is a red herring. It's what you spend. If you spent what anybody else spent, our taxes could be a lot lower. But you just go along with what the district wants. We have the most lucrative teachers contract in the county. As I've said before, in Unionville, in 4 years, their teachers will still be making thousands less than what we're paying our teachers now. We talk about capital reserve problems, that we need money for capital reserves. Where was the planning for that 2 years ago when you had the chance to come up with a decent teacher's contract? There isn't any planning. So who bears the brunt of that? We do, the taxpayers. Because now you have to ask for more money. That's irresponsible. With the increase of the assessed property values throughout our area, that should have been enough money for you to run a school district without asking for any tax increase. And speaking of no tax increases, Downingtown, for instance, has gone 6 years with no tax increase. Why can't we do that? What do we get for that money? I haven't seen any evidence of an improvement worth $30 million in the school district over 6 years. I just haven't seen it. I would echo the comments of Bill about the process and the comments from the board through this process. And then lastly, I'll say that the school district did reduce their budget request by $700,000, but they didn't decrease the tax increase for the property taxpayers. $700,000 is approximately 1%, one millage, 1%. Why wasn't that done? That was an insult. And then lastly, I'll just say, if you take the $700,000 that they took out now, all you need to do is come up with $1.2 million. And we could have no tax increase this year. $1.2 million is about 1% of your budget. You can't tell me you can't find that. So I would suggest that one of you tonight maybe make a motion that you reduce the budget by $1.2 million and give the taxpayers no tax increase for this coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no other public, oh, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Pataja. I'm at 14 Wildwood Drive in Willistown Township. And I was asked tonight to speak as a parent of Sugartown
I have to ask
Elementary
you
School
to wait till
students.
the end. There's another public comment section for any other subjects.
My apologies.
Is this about the budget?
No.
Okay, sorry about that. I just, in fairness to everybody, yeah, no problem. Sorry about that. All right, anybody else have any public comment on the budget? Vote. All right, seeing none, we will move on to voting on the budget adoption. Do I have a motion?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that the board approves an annual general fund budget for the 2018-19 school year for the total sum of $105 million, as written in the budget resolution.
All right, the motion, do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussions? All right. Just to make sure, Amy, you still on?
I'm here.
Any discussion or questions or comments on it, the motion?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right, seeing none. All those in favor? Amy?
I vote in favor.
All those opposed? All right, the motion passes 7-2. All right, at this point, do I have a motion for adjournment from the business part of the meeting?
So moved. Motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion and a second. All those in favor? Amy?
In favor.
All right, motion to adjourn passes 9-0. We will now move on to the work session scheduled for this evening. Are you staying on, Amy?
Yes, I will.
Okay. We have two this evening, Steve. Come on. Cut his pay. All right. First thing up is comments from our student representative. Any more comments other than 3 days and counting? 4 days and counting?
4 days and counting. No, I do. I have like one last thing I should do. This year, the seniors tried something new. We visited our middle school teachers and our elementary school teachers. So I wanted to give some feedback on that. And the students there as well. So I did see a lot of kids that I knew. But I wanted to just give some feedback that I heard on that. So going straight to the elementary schools. So I'm from Sugartown. See Mr. Hammond is here. So a lot of the students loved it, and I actually saw some nostalgic tears to see their old teachers. And one thing that really a lot of students liked was just going out to the playground for a couple minutes. So we haven't done that in 7 years, and it was a sight to see when you saw a bunch of seniors in their cap and gowns on the swings, going down slides, doing monkey bars. So that was that was one thing that everyone enjoyed. And middle school was also great because we have a lot more middle school teachers that we had, so we can see them. The only thing that a lot of the students thought was that could be improved was having a little bit more time to speak with our teachers. Especially for the middle school, we were kind of corralled through the different hallways, and we didn't have a ton of time to speak with our teachers, kind of catch up and say hi. So going in the years forward or years in the future, just have a little bit more time designated so we can say hi to our teachers.
Just so everybody who may not have children or be aware of what happened or may not have younger children. So all the graduating seniors on Friday first went over to the middle school in their cap and gowns and paraded through the middle school and saw all the students and all the teachers, and then got on buses and went to the elementary schools that they attended. So if you came from Markley, everybody came back to Markley or
What about
Sugartown
the
or
kids that transferred in?
I think they either
Did they get
chose-
adopted?
Yeah, well, some of them were adopted, and I think some of them opted not to even go, from what my one son, Jeffrey said, so.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends. I have a friend that moved here from Colorado. He went to a school, and I have friends that moved here just that sophomore year he came. So he was adopted by some of our friends, and we just came and went down to them, which is cool. Still a fun event for everyone.
A special thank you to the administration and the teachers and the staff for making that such an incredible experience. I know the schools were so excited to have the students come, and some wrote cards, and we're just so very excited. So a very special thank you to the administration, Mr. Flick and his team for making that happen, and the receiving administrators and staff for really making those seniors feel so special. It's fabulous.
And I heard about it from the perspective of having an elementary school child, well, 2 of them. And seriously, this was like on par with like Santa and the Easter Bunny coming to visit, because they were like it was like the gods had descended from Olympus and were walking in their midst. It was like crazy. So thank you guys.
And at Charlestown Elementary, we had Jim Kelly from Fox 29 News, or Bob Kelly from Fox 29 News, who actually covered the whole event. So that has gone viral. I know I posted it on my Facebook. It's gone all over the place. God bless Great Valley. We do amazing things, and it really makes me proud that we have those type of children that are really interested to go back to the elementary schools after putting in 13 years. So I'm glad it was a great thing for you guys.
I think the really good news is this is the beginning of a tradition. So I look forward to, and I know we all look forward to hearing about next year's walkthrough. So with a little more time in the middle school. So all right. That's it? That's your final remark?
Yes, and
This is your last opportunity?
it's my last time signing off, and I think it's have to go for a little bit. We have to plan things for the baccalaureate. So I'll be there on Wednesday. So I guess we're going to rehearse for everything that's going on there. So I'll see you guys in future endeavors.
We'll see you Friday.
Thank you so much, Tyler. Tyler, if you want to open your gift and show, you certainly can. And people will love what it is. Yes. We want to make sure you're walking proudly around campus.
Your parents aren't here anymore. I know.
They'll see it right when I get home.
Here's your big alley.
We bought that like 6 months ago because we knew. All right, now on to boring stuff. It's the IU report.
The CCIU has not met since we met last. We meet again on the 20th. So when we come back again, I will bring everybody up to speed at that time.
All right, that was easy. Program, so, want to talk about it?
Beginning in, for the 18-19 school year, we are going to be putting together a safety council. So the Great Valley Safety Council will be started for the 18-19 school year, but we will be looking for volunteers for those to apply. The council will be made up of representatives from each building, staff, administration, a board member, and I believe Mrs. Ravenfeld has volunteered to be a part of that council, as well as administrators from throughout the district. The council will be facilitated by Mr. Ken Stewart, our safety liaison, and the goal of the council would be to, in the climate in which we're living, and the many issues that are being presented to schools in light of safety, a way, a forum for us to identify best practices, implement best strategies, as well as vet new ideas. With each incident, we're learning, unfortunately, learning new things. And We are very fortunate to have Mr. Stewart in our district who is leading our safety work. We have amazing partnerships with our local law enforcement as well as the state and federal law enforcement. Our EMTs are amazing. And a lot of the exercises that we put in place are unknown purposefully for the protection and safety of our students and our staff. But this council will allow us to vet best practice as well as share ideas to be a conduit to the board and provide quarterly updates. So more to come on that, but we will have that up and running for the 18-19 school year.
And just so everybody's clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, the goal of this council is not to reveal some of those practices that we have in place to even the council. The goal is just to take ideas, vet them, and decide whether or not we should try to implement them, correct? So.
Absolutely. And as we put out the communication to garner membership into the council, it is the purpose of the group is to discuss best practice. We will certainly not compromise the security of our students and our staff by sharing any of our safety protocols that is aligned to the best practice nationally that and the insight that we've received. But it is truly to have a forum to discuss the practices we currently have in place, such as our entries and our exits and our security measures that are public. So this would certainly not be in any way compromising those security protocols that are at the direction of Mr. Stewart. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, the monthly enrollment report's there for anybody's viewing. Next up is policies, second reading and adoption for next week. Steph, you got nothing changing from last time we discussed?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I thought that we were holding off or adding the sentence into the drug-free workplace about anything that was prescribed, because right now it talks about nobody can be under any influence of alcohol and/or controlled substances, but there are some that are prescribed by physicians that employees may be having to take while they're at work for whatever situations. And I thought that we had talked about changing that, but I do not see that changed language reflected. These are the 351 and probably all of the associated and throughout the whole spectrum of those. And I thought we were either holding off on those until the fall or changing that language to add that part so that we're not telling people they can't take medicine as prescribed.
I do recall that discussion at the meeting.
I think we have the word misuse in there to
Right now, I think right now it doesn't say misuse in the policy. It says it prohibits any employee from being under the influence of alcohol or and/or controlled substance while at work. There is no misuse. You're not allowed to take them. So maybe it's in the guidelines then?
It's in the purpose.
So does the guidelines need to, because the guideline is saying none. I just want to make sure that we're accurately reflecting what it is that we plan to implement.
If you want to hold it, we can, but we did talk about it, and we have, in the purpose, we say the misuse of drugs.
That's why I'm saying, I just want to make sure our whole goal in updating these was to make sure that we were going to, and the guideline right now says none. Like if you keep going down the page from purpose, it says page 2, the top of page 2, the guidelines, that there is no place for misuse in that guideline.
I believe what we discussed, and if you remember, I was on speakerphone, but I do remember, and I believe it was and/or controlled substances while at work unless prescribed.
That's what I thought.
I think it was just that phrase.
Yes.
And if that's okay,
Yeah, can you just add that in
Gafredo,
there?
absolutely, we can put that in before we vote on next week. I think that was the only phrase to be
That was
added.
the only piece.
We can adjust that for a vote next week if that's the pleasure of the board.
Works for me.
All right. If anybody objects, that's what we'll do. All right, facilities. We have a few,
Yes.
first RFP and then an update.
can do, hold on. The Facilities Committee did not meet last month because we have spent so much intensive time ahead of that we just did not have that much to meet about this past month. The administration, however, did meet with a representative of the 4 municipalities on April 24th to continue discussions on new and progressing developments within each municipality. A copy of this is just the East Whiteland report, and we know that this is limited, but that report is attached. The other municipalities gave oral reports. The committee's working on a format for the spreadsheet that will keep us up to date on all of the developments. So hopefully when we come back in the fall, that's one of the things I'm going to work with Chuck a little bit over the summer to have something presentable for that first facilities meeting. We are planning a tour of the facilities for later this summer, and our next regularly scheduled facilities meeting is September 11th. And I believe that Mr. Linderman has a short update on the Backton Hill land sale of 7 acres to the GVCO.
Yes. Just for everyone's information, today was the date that the GVCO, the Great Valley Community Organization, was to finalize the approval and financing contingencies for the purchase of the first 7 acres of the land. If you recall, they purchased 7 acres with an option to buy 2 more. They subsequently came back and asked us to look. They want now 12 acres, and I'll get to that in a second. They needed an extension of 1 week because they're meeting with the township this week to discuss some other things, and it apparently got pushed off. So in consultation with our attorney, we agreed to push it off. We'll not push off the settlement of the 7 acres. That'll still happen sometime later this summer. The anticipated settlement date, which is later this summer, will not include the 2 additional acres. That should happen shortly after that. Shortly is a relative term in this process. We started this in 2015. So shortly will be my successor, maybe, who knows. Or her. Or, yes, or them, yeah. Just an update, the GV they had requested an additional 3 acres for a total of 5 over the original 7. Not much happening on that. The architect is in the midst of a wetland study to determine the best land to sell them. If they do, they ended up, if you recall, when we came back, they have a substantial donor who now wants to put a 90,000 square foot field house onto the community center. So the community center was just going to be roughly a little bit bigger than our gym at the high school. Now 90,000 square feet is roughly enough to play small soccer, lacrosse, hockey stuff inside. So the architect is in the midst of that wetland study, and for obvious reasons that takes a while because it's been pretty darn wet. Everything's a wetland now. The board here, who was not on the board when we did all the renovations to the buildings back in the 90s and 2000s, every site we have has wetlands. You may not think they are wetlands, but there's wetlands, so we've dealt with them. I mean, the most expensive wetlands was across the street here when we were doing the stormwater for the Katie Markley site behind the softball or the baseball field. There is a gigantic detention basin. Some night when you want to hear me really whine about bureaucracy, I will talk about that. They're also in the midst of doing an endangered species study, essentially the bog turtle. Things look pretty positive on that. They're just about done, or negative, whichever is the best for you. Negative means there is none, but it looks positive for us. So I'll just remind you that all the cost for anything we do there, they gave us a chunk of money. I think it was $60,000 to pay for things like this, which if we don't use it, comes off of the land purchase. So we are using that money, so it doesn't really cost you anything. And then finally, as we were dealing with all of this stuff here, the GVCO has approached the district about the possibility of, instead of buying the additional acres that they said they wanted, of possibly leasing the acres for parking. Still buying the 2 additional acres, but now leasing acres for parking. And at a thought, you think, oh, well, they just want to do this, but if you think about it big picture, it's really kind of a win-win for everybody. It would reduce the impervious surface on the total tract of land there in the long run, because eventually at some point, someday, sometime, and that time may never come, you're going to develop there and we're going to need parking. And when we use parking, they won't use parking. So if the township can see it their way, we could lease them property, so we'd still be getting revenue for it. And then when we, at some point down the road, could be 3 years, could be 30 years, you build something there and you need a parking lot. You know, our kids are in school during the day. Their kids are there at night. So the parking, it just makes too much sense, so it probably won't work. But more to come on that. I'm kind of excited about that. It's a new concept of that. Now, we would obviously have provisions because we don't know where our parking would need to be, and since we're leasing it, we would figure that out, and our attorney would do that. So, any questions? Really, I just wanted to give you an update. We'll update you in August if we've made settlement. If not, I'll try and give you a date on when the actual settlement is, and that's it.
All right. Yep, the electrical RFP.
Yeah, there's two RFPs in there from Oldham for Winston High School with Tech
license and
All right, so your recommendation is of approval of these RFPs for the work for this, I assume, over the summer? Yep. These are the
I
ones
have a
that
quick
moving
question.
forward. Yep.
how come they mentioned Conestoga? Was it a bid done together with Conestoga? I don't want to pay for Conestoga's work, that's what. I thought so, yeah, so. Okay, so.
They got wind of you, Chuck.
They knew he wouldn't have it. They knew he wouldn't have it.
Yeah.
Well, this year, but in the past, that's why I had to do this.
All right, so that's there for approval for next week?
Yeah.
All right, moving on to your whole big section.
Sorry, Kyle. We did that to comply with the National School Lunch Program and the federal regulations that require that you do an RFP for staffing. So we had several people. We did a RFP similar to the RFP we did for AIDS, and our recommendation is SOS there. Down into finance, you have the budget transfers. It's the time of year we Section 6787 of the school code requires you authorize budget transfers to bring our accounts into line. You have a preliminary look at those down there right now. We also need, before you break for summer, to have a board recommended, committed, restricted, assigned, and unassigned fund balance reserves. You will see them there. They are very similar to this year. The only major difference is the pension reserve will be zero now, as we've used it all this year. Devereaux charges are about the same. We're allowing a little bit extra for long-term special ed settlement claims. That's actually a restricted fund, so it's even more tightly monitored. And then there you see the fund balance reserve that would be left. Also, we're going to recommend that, the board approve us filing up to 40 of the attached district-initiated property tax appeals. We have to do this by August 1st, so that's why it needs to be done now.
These are in line with our policy that we adopted
They are
last year?
absolutely in line with our policy. They are vetted, and our consultant has a very objective formula that selects them.
Just for the record, what is that policy, just so we can hear it again, as everyone's sitting here?
It's policy number 620.
You don't have to state the number, but just generally,
It's-
what is the policy, the guidelines that they use to come up with a list?
Oh, that's easier.
Yes. The threshold?
627, I'm sorry. So, what they do is they have a metric. They take our entire tax duplicate and they run a program that analyzes the implied market value based on the current assessment there. The implied market value is a market value that is generated from the State Tax Equalization Board. There's a STEB ratio that goes against that. So it's about a little over 50% this year. So if you have an assessed value of $100,000, you technically should be living in a house that's worth $200,000. So conversely, if you have an assessed value of $500,000, you should be living in a house that's assessed at $1 million. So then they have a comparison model. The appraisers, Valbridge appraisers and consultants have a comparison model that looks at surrounding like properties, factors it in, and kicks it up to where the differential between the current assessed value and what it should be exceeds the $10,000 requirement in the board policy. Quite frankly, of the 40, we don't have the wherewithal to do that. It's just us. Well, actually, it's just me and Mimi and Trip Lukens from Valbridge and whoever they got working for them. So that was the first run based on the things. They now take a closer look. It's going to take more than the meeting next week to take a closer look, and we will narrow that down to probably the top 20 or 25 of those. Some may fall out because when you're looking at them on paper, house may be burnt down and he doesn't know, or I say that we would know that, but something may be wrong, and so they go back and analyze them a little bit closer, not quite all the way. When we get it down to our final 20 or so, we'll then do a preliminary appraisal on them, take them to file it with the County Board of Assessment Appeals in August, and get on the docket for the hearings, which generally are in October.
I wanted to understand better what we pay for. I read that, but I'm not quite
Well,
sure. Do we pay them for the upfront work, and then do they get a percentage if it goes up, or do we pay them no matter what?
We pay them no matter what. I mean,
Okay.
it's an appraisal. We are paying them based on the work they do.
The whole research piece is all, we pay for it all, and then we get what we get, and they don't have any skin in the game really as far as.
Yeah,
us
and
doing
we've
that.
been doing this for a number of years with this firm, and this is part of Whistler Pearlstein as a division that does this. Mimi Choksky does this for us. She does it for TE. She does it for some of the other school districts down in Delaware and Montgomery County. It's very good. We've done well. Before we did district-initiated appeals, we used them to defend the appeals too. So we will be using them to defend appeals too. There will be a number of commercial properties that will try to appeal their assessments from before. We will defend them. We did that last year. It was the first year since probably about 2011 that we actually had had the commercial properties trying to appeal again. So.
Can I ask one clarification question, just for my own edification? So the policy 627 has the threshold of $10,000 in there. That's the number. So with the 40 properties that have been identified, are there more properties? Like, did we just take the top 40? Or are there like 120 properties that fall within that
These are the
threshold?
top 40, and this threshold was, each of these properties have a $1 million discrepancy. We could go with more, but that we don't have the bandwidth ourselves to do that.
And in the past, we've gone predominantly after commercial properties, but it looks like on this list here of 40, it's basically any type of property that exists, commercial.
It has to be based on any type of
single-family home.
property. If you recall last
Yeah.
summer, the Valley Forge decision, which was the Upper Marion School District versus the King of Prussia Mall, I guess it was, and that the judge basically said you can still do these, but you had to do everybody. You couldn't just target commercial. So last year we did our first 4 residential properties. We need to have kind of a good faith effort. They're a little harder to get to our threshold. I mean, they're still subject to our $10,000 threshold, which I don't know about you guys, but my house is okay, and it's not $5,000.
And that's a $10,000 differential of what they're paying versus what we believe they should pay, right?
Right.
So it's not even a, even though my taxes might be $5,000, it's now saying we believe it ought to be $15,000 of taxes.
Yes.
Yes, which is a big jump in assessment value.
It's,
Right, so.
and there are a few farms there, not commercial farms, so.
And also too, I mean, I know when we look at this, it's, you take into consideration the true delta, the differential, so that, you know, it's really what we're trying to get those that are really askew, off balance from what the fair market value should be, so I presume that also applies to the residential properties as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Same. It's one list. This is just the way it, came through. So you have on the list there, you can see it's by municipality and the property class over on the right. So it's either, it is what it is.
Okay, I'm going to ask another question, and this is like a crazy question, but for property, do we ever do the reverse? So are there ever properties that are over, we charge more, or do we just rely on people to file an appeal? Do we ever notify people or anything like that? I think I know the answer, but just putting it out there.
You're right. No.
And Chuck, when's the last time these properties were, when's the last time the residential properties were assessed?
1996. Well, actually 1994, which the effective date was then 96.
But that was all properties.
That was all properties. Most of the residentials will be. Some of the commercial properties, and I don't have the detail here, we'll do that as we dig in. Some of the commercial properties actually went through the appeal process back in 2008 or 9 or 10 when we were having the big issues, back when our tax base was eroding. And so now those properties are now worth more, because a lot of times the appraisals are done on a lease basis, which back then, maybe they were 40 or 50% leased. Now they're 90 or 100% leased, which makes them worth more to remarket them for.
So what's happening? You're gonna sit down and analyze these a little bit deeper, and you come back potentially with a more truncated list?
Yeah,
and then ask
we
us
need
to
approval
approve it?
to file
Okay.
all of these. We will not file all these. I don't have the bandwidth to do that. We will truncate this list down to somebody may be on there, and I guess, maybe they're under construction now, and so we'll say we're going to back off of that because we know there'll be an interim coming.
So next week, we'll be approving this list of
This
40
list.
to go after as the process moves forward, if you guys feel that it makes sense to pursue. And that could be any subset of the 40.
Yes, and
up to 40, but more than likely won't be 40. So that's okay.
Yes, and in the next agenda item, just to kind of cover ourselves, we did it last year a little bit because we had to add the residential ones after the fact. We adjusted the agenda item to the authorization for the superintendent or I to award bids, contracts, pay bills. That's basically the same, and file additional tax appeals if necessary. If you recall last year, the June transfer tax data comes in, and there was a couple big commercial properties that had sold, which were then added to the list. So we don't want to miss that.
Otherwise, we got to meet in July.
Right.
Otherwise, you got to meet in July, or we just have to bag it and wait for another whole year.
Well, and the whole goal of this is tax parity, right?
I just want to make sure that the people who aren't appealing their taxes because they trust you, or they're afraid of government, or they don't want to do this, you got people screaming at you for your taxes being high. So if you've got somebody paying X amount of money, but somebody's paying not their fair share, just if everybody pays their fair share, it's fine. There ought to be a rolling assessment. I mean, that's, every 3 years they ought to be assessing everybody.
But Chuck, help me understand. So if someone has had a farm property for the past 25 plus years, and it hasn't been reassessed, just like any other residential property has not been reassessed in that time, the only delimiting factor here is that they have more land, which is increased in value. So now you're saying that because that property is worth more, it should be reassessed?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're saying for every property. If it falls into the threshold, we are absolutely saying that.
I mean, the biggest problem we face is that the county controls the countywide reassessments of all properties, not us. And what'd you say, 94 it was done?
Well, 94 was the actual reassessment. It was
But it
effective
implemented in
96.
97, right? It was 96,
So
right.
technically, in the value, the reason it's down to a 50% state number, that is to ratchet it back to what the value was in 94.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
so that's the real gap.
we're actually at a point right now where it is now longer since we've reassessed than it was the last time we reassessed. It was a 72 reassessment that got redone in 94. Now we have a 94 reassessment, and it's 2018, so you're 2 years longer. So
And the problem with that is it's a political hot potato, right? And was it Delaware that just got forced, Delaware County?
Yeah.
Just got forced into it?
Yeah.
Bucks County hasn't done it since 62, right?
The county commissioners never want to reassess. It's like the kiss of death.
So the way I understand it, being since we have not been assessed for so many years, there's a disparity in everybody's assessed value. However, there are other properties where the disparity is a lot higher. Sometimes people construct an addition onto their house and they don't get a permit. So what happens, the net result of that is their property then is worth a whole lot more. And we don't know about it because they didn't get a permit, so they didn't pay an interim, and the disparity there is a lot worse. And I think that those are the addresses that are on the list.
No, those are farms. Those are farms between 20 and 70 acres that now the district is going after just because they're landowners, and I don't think that's fair. If it's
only properties that are under assessed, not paying their fair share of taxes. That's pure and simple.
Which is exactly what we want them to do. I mean, don't we all, I mean, I'm paying my fair share. Shouldn't we expect everyone to pay their fair share?
Yeah, Grant, I was just looking at the list. I saw a house that sold that was, the value was assessed at like 500K, and then I go look at Redfin and it was sold for 2 million. So you look at something like that and you're like, oh, it's underassessed by half.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying if someone has not transferred their property in 30 years, and now all of a sudden, just because they have more land, you're coming after them for a delta in taxes.
Well, first off, none of this, the data that we have here doesn't say whether or not it's been transferred or not. And secondly, all of these landowners could have, 10 years ago, when the market crashed, could have filed an reassessment, and had their taxes dropped, right? I mean, that could have happened also. So all we're saying is that these are the biggest 40 deltas in the district, and we believe that everybody should pay their fair share, so. Right, yeah.
I will say that most of the residential ones have been sold. They're including the farms, have turned over.
And most of the commercial
ones
ones
the last time
filed.
when we tried to file them a few years ago, they were turned over.
There are new homes in Atwater that are listed as vacant on here. How, is that, that's just probably an error and those would get thrown out? Because if no one's ever lived there, how are they not, yeah, there's a couple I recognize the Atwater addresses. So they have to be less than a year old.
Well, that's why Chuck's saying I think he's got more
Right, so, all right.
details. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously, yeah, the list needs more work.
All right, yep. Any more questions on this? All right, so next week we'll be voting to approve the initial 40, the potential moving forward. All right, well, we talked about authorization for awards and et cetera. Student photography, RFP.
We, our purchasing department did an RFP for pictures and the high school, middle school, for the high school, middle school. Actually, our entire purchasing department is here, Missy and Mike. That's, everybody agreed, that's who they want, right? Yeah, so it's good. It kind of standardizes things, gets things a little more in line. We'll deal with elementary pictures at a future date. Then you have the contracts for Canvas.
That's the learning management system that we use for the iPads.
Then there's a couple approved private school agreements.
I'd like to take a minute there. I need some info on this. So these are extended school year programs. And I do understand the protection here, so I'm going to keep it real high. The one I'm looking at is for a 20-day period of time, and it is really expensive because there's a per diem here for residential fee and a per diem for educational fee. Why would we be paying for an extended school year program to the tune of $9,000 for a month?
What extended school year does, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting to talk about if a student regresses, all students will regress over an extended period of time off. And then you measure how much time it takes them to recoup their skills that they've regressed. And if that is a marked period of time, they're eligible for extended school year services. So if a child, the goals of the child are being met, or the educational is being provided in an out-of-district placement, the extended school year would also be provided at that placement. So we're not necessarily talking about a child who's with us during the school year and then would require this degree of support or service in the summer. We're talking about a child who is already in that more restrictive environment, and then the extended school year would be provided in that restrictive environment as well. So we're not talking about, extended school year is not to go over and above what's being provided during the school year. It's to maintain the skills and competencies and services.
So on these agreements, Regina, the ones that are also, that have residential fees, they are also getting residential services now?
The services would be matched. They would not be exceeding them.
Thank you.
Samantha? Good.
It's the same question.
Okay. No, that's all right, just making sure.
And just to clear that up, they're mandated. It's not that once the need is found, it's a mandated requirement.
Yes, and it is the responsibility of special education service providers to monitor throughout the school year and monitor after significant breaks of time to identify regression, how much did they lose, and then how much time did it take to recoup those skills. And if in fact there's evidence to support the fact that they are eligible for extended school year, we have to provide the extended school year aligned to the goals of their IEP.
All right. Onward, donation.
You have three, you have three donations there. One is the, for construction of softball dugouts on the varsity softball field to high school. One's a home heart health for high school autism, and one's from Walmart for the library at the high school.
Will any of the dugout stuff have to wait pending the water main?
It depends.
And it's all the same
Yeah.
field, correct? Ish?
Ish.
Yes.
They're kind of working opposite end. It'll depend on where the stuff is.
How it goes. I'm just thinking of what they might have to store. Those water main things are not small.
Yeah, if we can work it, we'll work it. If we can't,
Okay.
they'll just wait. We're going to be done the water main by the end of August.
I just want to make sure that we're upfront with the parents and say, if this in fact is approved, that they're aware that there could be, that they might not be able to start this as soon as perhaps they had been thinking.
Question on the Walmart community grant. You want this, Chuck? Who wants this one? Okay, so generally, when we get a grant, we have to provide something for that grant money. What are we doing to get the grant? Or is it not that kind of grant?
I don't believe it's.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, information reports are there. Any other items? All right. Any other committee reports or board comments?
Can I ask a board question at this point? Is that part of the comments?
Yep.
So we've had discussions about the art teacher retiring and the impact, and I just wanted to follow up and ask if we have looked at how many, I know we're keeping all the same classes that we've had always offered. I mean, on the offering, the same ones are offered. Do we know how many kids this year who have asked to have those in the fall will be denied them because there aren't enough sections versus last year? I'm just curious if there's been a change, if the number of sections has impacted the ability of kids who had that as a first choice to get it.
Absolutely, and actually Dr. Goffredo has done an extensive analysis, and we actually had a meeting with the art teachers today, Dr. Goffredo, Dr. O'Toole, myself, as well as high school administration. And Dr. Goffredo, are you prepared to address those questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Smith. It's a great question. We've been spending a lot of time as an administrative team looking at all the schedules in all the 6 schools. So looking at the review, where we are now in the scheduling process. In the high school and the secondary schools, their scheduling is really driven by student choice and the number of requests we get for courses. So I have actually done an analysis with Dr. O'Toole and some other administrators looking at the number of requests that we have this year, and we've begun the scheduling and how many of those students have gotten in. And I also pulled the numbers from last year to look at last year's art requests and number of students. They are very, very comparable at this stage in the game. And so the scheduling will continue. We're now at June 4th. The high school scheduling process will continue for another month where those numbers will go in. But I am not seeing any decline in terms of the percentage of students that made requests and that got in. Every year, because we have a 7-period day, there are some choices and they're not always able to be honored. But it is very, very similar. So just as an example, we may have a class last year that 15 kids weren't able to get, and this year it's close to 15 students not getting that same class. It's, I don't want to say identical, but very, very comparable.
But that same process and 15 criteria exists not only for art, but for music or FACS or any other program for that matter, even math or English, right? We're not going to offer 6 sections of an English course with 5 kids in them, right? We consolidate it up. Sometimes it works well for some, other times somebody may want to take AP Bio at the same time and it just doesn't jive, right? And they've got to make a choice. Am I hearing?
Absolutely, we've done that for many years. I did that when I was principal and also in my role with oversight as assistant superintendent. So you're right, that is how, since I've been here at Great Valley, we've scheduled.
Just for clarification, what I heard then, and tell me if this, is that for students this year versus last year, it's no harder to get art than it was in the past, assuming enough kids sign up for the class. We're not going to run a class with 2 kids, but that there's enough It's no harder this year than it was last year to get your art if you put that in your first choice.
That is correct. At this point, that's where we are, so.
And we're also trying to be creative in where we can consolidate some classes, 2 different classes, for instance, and run it kind of simultaneously. We're doing that where we can.
Yes, we have, just as we've done in some of our world language classes. Sometimes in the past, you'll have students in French 4 and French 5, low numbers. We combine them into one class and the teacher differentiates. We do that sometimes for low-level electives, and we are planning to do that next year for art to keep the program whole and keep it flourishing.
Dan, last year, I know we did run a lot of these programs with a lot fewer children than we would like to. I know there were a couple classes that had 5 and 6 children in them, that you did do exactly what you said. Eventually, things were consolidated, kids were moved around, schedules were firmed out. But I educated both my kids here. Those art classes have never been full, to my knowledge. My kids and anybody else's kids have always gotten art. It may not have been their first choice on the art roster, but there has always been art available for the children that have wanted it. So anything that has happened with us using a teacher has not impacted anything that we've already been doing in any way that I'm seeing. Am I correct or am I wrong?
No, I see it exactly as you stated. So as we look at the request, as I said in the onset, everything is really driven by the request. So looking at the number of students that we have and the classes that we can offer, we're fully confident that students are going to get a lot of their requests, and it's going to be comparable, very, very close to what we've had in years past. So I do agree with your assessment. That's how the numbers are breaking out at this point. Thank you.
Dan, while you're there, can I ask a different question? Just because I know in the past, it's come up, especially with 8th grade, and I'm not asking for this necessarily this year, but do we take a look on the whole for classes that, not just art, but for all of our classes, that if we have a section of a class where students are historically not getting their first choice, and sometimes their second choice, and sometimes their third choice, that we're looking at how to rebalance so that we're serving what the kids are asking us for, that we're not in a stale situation where kids are forced to take things that they're not requesting.
And Jed, is your question for middle school, high school, secondary
I
as a
think
whole?
across the board, you know, it's not a one, and obviously, I'm kind of asking, does the district take a look at this in general, not just for art because this question came up, but in general, as you look at what you want to offer and how this goes?
Yes.
Across the board.
I think we did that, I can't remember, 2 or 3 years ago, right? Maybe 4, I don't know.
Well, it's
I've been on the
not-
board a little while, when we hired a second tech ed.
Yeah,
for
but that's,
all
we
the STEAM
continue to
classes.
do that on an ongoing basis, so we make sure that we're up to date with what.
We have been. We've been very responsive with student requests, and at the same time being very efficient with our staffing. As you know, in more recent years, we've done a much better job adhering to class size guidelines and honoring them as guidelines. And I think that's been an improvement. And the same thing is just monitoring the numbers year to year, seeing where trends are, and then adding courses as we see the interest and enrollment. Thank you.
I think one of the challenges that needs to be addressed when we balance the courses, we begin in August with balanced classes. And then as students change levels or move from one section to another, or their schedules don't fit as they did, or they take courses over the summer that allow them to matriculate to a different course, they become unbalanced quickly. So that is something that we are continually looking at how we can monitor that and adjust as we go.
A question, I'll follow on that. So, do we expect that to happen any less this year? I know last year was the first time some of the levels were taken out in the high school, so there was many more kids, I would guess, that moved around because they weren't sure what the right level was and they either went up or down. Was last year an exception, do we think, to the number of that movement after the first day of school, or does it happen every year for different reasons?
Well, it happens, but it happened much more this year than in other years, I believe, due to the alignment of matching to higher ed. Higher ed doesn't have accelerated. They typically, or they look at your standards, your honors, your AP. And with that adjustment, it caused some students, we had a lot of disparity from level to level. So students who took honors who then bounced down to standard, then our standards classes were very large. We also had students who took courses over the summer so they could matriculate. They were scheduled for one course, but when they took a course over the summer, by the time they came back to school, they no longer needed that course and they were put into another course. So one of the, Mr. Flick and the administration are looking at providing a buffer as best as possible while still balancing courses and adhering to class size guidelines. So it is truly a balancing and an ongoing adjustment.
All right, any other board comments? All right, at this point, I'll open up the podium for any other comments on any other agenda items. If you can just come to the podium and state your residency and name, and please try to limit your time to 3 minutes or less in case others want to speak. It would be appreciated, and I'll let you go first. Thank you.
I appreciate that and apologize for my breach in protocol the earlier meeting.
Thank you for your patience.
Second time around, Danielle Pataja, 14 Wildwood Drive in Willistown Township. I was asked to come speak today on behalf of myself and my students at Sugartown Elementary School. I have a kindergartner and a second grader, and we have had an amazingly positive experience here. We moved to Malvern specifically to go to Great Valley Schools 5 years ago and are still very, very pleased with the quality of education that we've received thus far. Obviously, that's only been for 3 years total. I understand and appreciate the student achievements that were recognized here today are really a testament to the relationship among the students, the teachers, the administration, and the board, and that doesn't come easily, and that those students are the beneficiaries of the unique programs that we have here at Great Valley, like the opportunity to go say thank you to your elementary school teachers when you graduate from high school is just one of those unique opportunities, but in the programming as well as the quality of the extracurricular activities that we offer to our students, which hopefully my students will partake in as they grow through the years. And I don't purport to be privy to all of the specifics of crafting that agreement that governs that relationship between the board and the school and the administration and teachers. But I would implore everyone on both sides of that to continue to work towards an agreement that allows our school district to continue to flourish and thrive and support all of our students and produce the citizens of character that we've seen come in this building today. So thank you for all of your efforts on both sides. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ethan Seeley.
I'm Owen Deitch.
And I'm Erin Bevick. I'm a junior at Great Valley High School. Today, we're here to discuss a petition we're beginning to amend the leveling structure at the high school. As a student body, we believe that the accelerated classes that had just been discussed, they're beneficial for our school. In the past year, the accelerated classes have been eliminated from the high school curriculum. Additionally, the weighting system for grade point averages has been adjusted. As a result, the class sizes have grown, the teachers cannot adequately connect with their students, and the weighting of the classes has been altered. And some classes have over 32 kids in one room with one teacher, and it's not fair to the teachers or the students. And despite administrative efforts, multiple teachers in the same classroom has not been solving the problem. If teachers are not trained to work together and are not giving the proper time to plan lessons together, the fact that there's 2 teachers in a classroom is ineffective. And the class sizes, some of them are too large, and as we've kind of touched on here today, some of them are also too small. On the school board website, the recommended class size is 26 to 30 students, and I know that there's a lot of effort put into kind of reaching this goal. and we believe that the accelerated classes would be extremely effective in making this more feasible, especially because it has been less of a problem in the past. The first problem with this is that it's tough to create a good learning environment for the students with 30 plus students in a class with one teacher. The ratio is being exceeded. Some of the classes we've had have had the upwards of 32, 34 students, and not just for the beginning of the year, not just at the end of the year, throughout the year they've been really, really large classes. Additionally, the students aren't being adequately challenged or supported as a result of fewer levels. Because there's fewer levels, students are pigeonholed one way or the other, and gifted and remedial students are placed in the same learning environment, and they're not receiving the necessary academic support they need because everyone's kind of operating at a different learning pace, and with the length of our periods, it's tough for teachers to accommodate everyone while still getting through the curriculum that they've had approved. And the weighting system has also been problematic. The classes that had a greater weight now have less weight for the same rigor. So advanced placement classes, they had originally had a 1 on the weighting scale for GPA, as you all know, and they now have 0.5. And the rigor of the class hasn't changed, but the weighting has, which isn't really incentivizing students or rewarding them for the rigor of an AP course. And I can attest to that rigor. And I think that it's important that students are being given the support that they need academically. We would like to see a reestablishment of the previous leveling system, a return to the previous weighting, and amending the class sizes. As students, we're really passionate about our education, and we hope to have the ideal conditions for us to reach our fullest potential. We hope the administration can work together with the students of Great Valley to create the best possible learning environment. Thank you guys for your time.
I just want to say thank you to the three of you. It's always fun to hear from the students and get their perspectives, and thank you very much. All right, any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Carrie Hemler, and I've been an educator for 10 years in Florida and in Great Valley. I've worked for public
real
and
quick,
private.
Just a residency for your
Oh,
record?
East Whiteland.
Sorry,
Whiteland.
just, thank you.
It has come to my attention that the teachers have not been extended contracts. Growing up in a public school community, I felt like the teacher contracts were always the most important thing, and Great Valley is highly reflective of that. We are a very competitive district. If you look around, I feel like, you compare, TE to Great Valley, so I feel like not only are we competitive, our teachers are so dedicated. I see how invested they are. We have such a diverse population of students. The amount of time they take, the amount of creativity they use, and I feel that it is so important to retain these qualified teachers who are doing such an amazing job with our kids. By the way, my kids go to Sugartown. I have twins in second grade. We also spent some time at Katie Markley. So I've been able to experience the wealth of wonderful teachers that we have. So ultimately, I say, let's hold on to the good teachers. And so I ask the board to please consider extending contracts to teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Or excuse me, public comments? Sorry about that. All right, I just real quick, the board has tremendous respect for our teachers. Many of us have or have had students in the district. Mine's graduating this year. This has been evidenced in part by the fact that our teachers remain the highest paid public school district in Chester County. It's the highest starting wages and the highest overall wages of any of the schools in Chester County. In addition, the teacher's healthcare package is one of the most lucrative in the county. So we continue to negotiate with them, and we're very optimistic we will come to a conclusion that's fair to both sides, hopefully in the near future. So, any other comments? All right, with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much for coming, and hope you have a good evening.